All right, for more on this, we are now being joined by Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, India's former envoy to the United Nations. He was in fact at the helm of affairs as India's permanent representative at the UN when Prime Minister Modi in 2014 asked the UN General Assembly to declare 21st June as the International Day of Yoga. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you.
Ambassador Mukherjee, from 2014 to now 2023, now Yoga Day is truly a global event, and growing in size and popularity year on year. When you were there at the UN, give us a sense of the diplomacy that went behind the scenes and how International Yoga Day came to be implemented. I believe that the proposal was adopted in just about 75 days.
Well, yes, the proposal was adopted in 75 days. It was made on the 27th of September, and the General Assembly adopted the resolution on the 11th of December. In between those 75 days, we had to strategize on how to implement the Prime Minister's proposal, because before he made the proposal, no such idea had come either into the United Nations or even within the government of India. And therefore, we had a clear field. It was a challenge and an opportunity. What we did was to use the opportunity for two things. One was to locate the proposal inside an existing process in the United Nations, which was the negotiation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we put the proposal under the goal of global health, which today is a Sustainable Development Goal of Agenda 2030. The second thing that we had to do was to network to get the proposal adopted. It required a majority, which meant 97 countries had to agree out of the 193-member General Assembly. In order to get to this figure of 97, we decided to reach out to the developing countries. And if you remember, in the United Nations, there's a group of developing countries called the G77. Now, we were negotiating the sustainable goals together as a group, and therefore, that gave us the opportunity to get our first co-sponsor from the G77 and China. And China and India became the first co-sponsors of the proposal on the list, after which the other countries followed.
Sir, now yoga is an example of India's soft power. Prime Minister Modi will be leading the Yoga Day celebrations at UN headquarters in just a few hours from now. This was India's idea, and the world welcomed it. How do you look at it now, the scale of acceptability and your effort into that?
Well, we made an effort as a team, and I was very fortunate to have 8 officers with me who were able to network and amplify the support that we got. Out of the 193 members, we got 177 as co-sponsors, and nobody opposed it, which was therefore a unanimous decision. After that, the celebration of the Yoga Day from the 21st of June 2015 has actually grown in volume and in quality. It has begun to focus, as you mentioned in the introduction, on specific themes. And this year the theme is the world is one family of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But there have been other benefits of adopting the Yoga Day resolution. One of the most visible benefit is to focus on the solar energy, which is also integral to yoga, for pushing the agenda on climate action. And in 2015, in November, India and France took the initiative to launch the International Solar Alliance. And I feel very happy that in 2018, India became the headquarters of the International Solar Alliance, which today has 114 countries, most of whom are countries of the global south. So it shows that there has been an impact on climate change. And this was mentioned in the Prime Minister's speech when he introduced why it is important to practice yoga and to have yoga as part of the international agenda. Similarly, when COVID happened, yoga and its contribution to individual health became a very visible manifestation. And there was no resistance to the idea that yoga can be used for either climate action or for confronting COVID. When the resolution was adopted, these things were not very clear. But today, things are clear.
Interesting. Ambassador Mukherjee, you're also been a top diplomat, so let's talk about India's growing stature in global diplomacy a bit. You know, Prime Minister Modi is on a state visit to the United States. This is only the third state visit of Joe Biden's presidency. Cooperation and deals on defense and high-tech sectors are on the agenda of this visit, apart from yoga as well. Talk to us about the significance of this visit, Prime Minister's visit, state visit to the United States, and how important it is for the U.S. to forge deeper ties with India.
It is important for the US to forge deeper ties with India, a process which actually began with US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt inviting India to join him in 1942 January to launch the Declaration for United Nations. So we became part of the United Nations thanks to this invitation from the President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt. Since then, our cooperation has gone through ebbs and flows, which have actually depended more on the priorities of the United States, especially during the Cold War, than on the priorities of India. I am happy that after the Cold War ended, India and the United States have rediscovered themselves and their common objectives, which were set out in the UN Charter. Two of the areas where I think there's a lot of focus during the current visit of Prime Minister Modi is in transfer of technology, especially for defense manufacturing, and in a strategic focus on in the Indo-Pacific region. As far as transfer of technology is concerned, many of us have been following this issue through the media, and we know that there is a contract which is going to be approved for the transfer of technology for manufacture of jet engines, military jet engines in India by General Electric. The devil always is in the details. How much of technology will be transferred and how much of it will have to be bought off the shelf by India is the test of this initiative. But it is a welcome initiative because you remember that after India's nuclear explosions in May 1998, there was a complete ban from the United States on the access to any dual-use technology by India. So we've come a long way since May 1998 when the sanctions were imposed on India. And today we have the United States as a partner in this area.
Yes,
on the Indo-Pacific.
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. On the Indo-Pacific, again, the devil is in the details. One of the critical details which people like us have spoken and written about is the divergence between what is meant by the Indo-Pacific. For India, Prime Minister Modi at the Shangri-La Dialogue has clearly explained, like Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, that the Indo-Pacific means the entire Indian and Pacific Oceans. The United States, in the Trump and Biden administrations, say that the Indo-Pacific is only half the Indian Ocean, which is from the tip of India towards the Malacca Straits, and the entire Pacific Ocean. Now, for India, that is an important detail because a vast amount of India's core national interests are located in the other side of the Indian Ocean, the Western Indian Ocean, which is between the Red Sea and the western coast of India.
Right.
Now, if the Indo-Pacific does not cover this, then we have to engage with the United States to persuade them to include this region also, like Japan has done in the Indo-Pacific. That is the main point, because all the initiatives, all the activities that take place, if one partner does not sort of move into the entire region, then that region is left open for China to come in and others to come in, and then we have to respond to those threats and challenges on our own and without the partnership of the United States.
Yes, very little time, sir, but I want to pick your brain on these two crucial factors that could be that could play a role in these talks, the bilateral talks that Prime Minister will have with Joe Biden. One is the China factor, where there is convergence of interests, and the other is the Russia factor, where there is divergence of opinion. So how do you think that playing out during these talks?
I don't. China is an Asian country, and Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar has repeatedly said that we are in favor of a multipolar Asia, which means that we have to have our own role as an Asian power. And if countries which are outside Asia, like the United States, are supportive of that role, then I think that is welcome. But that does not mean that we do not engage with China at all. And I think the fact that just 2 days ago, the United States at the level of their foreign minister have engaged with China and with the president of China shows that even the United States is engaging with China, which it calls the single biggest existential threat to the United States in the national security document they published a few months ago. So engagement with China is the objective, but at the same time, the support for an equal role for India in Asia is also an equally important objective. On Russia, I think a lot of people are aware, by following the reports on your channel, that the situation is not black and white. If there are issues regarding what is happening in Ukraine, those issues should have been and must be addressed within a United Nations resolution which was adopted unanimously in February 2015. I was in New York when it was done. And that resolution upheld the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, but it called on Ukraine to reach a political settlement for eastern Ukraine, the region of the Donbass. Now, without that happening, and the United Nations told the Security Council the same thing a week before the Russian-Ukraine war started, that it's this resolution that is the framework for a sustainable political settlement. And our view and our position conveyed that this is not an era for war. Yes. Is linked with that unanimous Security Council resolution, which most people do not want to refer to today, because that puts obligations on everybody, the people who signed the resolution, Ukraine, Russia, France, Germany, but also the United Nations Security Council, which endorsed that resolution. And because they endorsed the resolution on all countries of the United Nations, because the United Nations Charter requires all members to follow UN Security Council resolutions. So I think that we cannot escape the political settlement that is required in Ukraine, and that can happen only through dialogue and diplomacy.
All right, Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, always a pleasure to have you and have your perspective on the global events. Thanks very much for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you.